Hi, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of SuperNova Commencements. I am your host, Kashi Sehgal, and today we have a wonderful show for you today. We're talking about nonprofits, and we're talking about some other things too, but we're talking about nonprofits. So first of all, welcome to all of you. I should do that. Welcome to all of you, and congrats to the graduates. I know that y'all still join us, even though you have graduated. So we love to have you. And welcome to all the students still in school and everyone else tuning in. Okay, so we're talking about nonprofit management today. And so in our data career powered by data segment brought to us by our partners at Steppingblocks, we want to deep dive into that today. So let me give you some stats. So the most common degree for someone in nonprofit management is a degree in psychology, which is interesting. The average age of the industry is 40. It's 66% female. And there's over 1 million people, 1.1 million people in the industry. So there are a lot of people doing mission-driven work and trying to help people, and that's awesome. We need more of that. Top skills to be in the nonprofit management space: public speaking. Makes sense. You're leading organizations and you're inspiring people and trying to create movements. Event management and leadership. And then the skills that draw the biggest salaries: housing and development boards, philanthropy, and grants. So where the money is. Most people come from these schools: Penn State, NYU, and Arizona State. We've seen those schools come up time and time again. And those are big schools. So not surprised to see them show up. Okay, we're ready for our speaker. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's bring her on screen. All right, everyone, please welcome Careshia Moore. She's president and CEO of Usher's New Look. Hi, welcome.
Hey, Kashi, thank you for having me.
We are excited. So please kick us off and tell us where you're from and where you went to school and what you majored in.
So I am from Miami, Florida. I was born and raised there and went to school at the University of Florida. So I am actually a triple gator. I have a bachelor's and master's in education and became an educator, and then later decided, and we can get into the details, but decided to go to law school. So I received my law degree about almost 10 years after I graduated with my master's degree. And now I'm here in Atlanta.
And how did you get from law school and a master's to where you are today?
Right. So it's I tell people all the time when I'm talking about career, it's not always a straight road, but it's about the experiences that you have. And so when I first started teaching, my first role, I really was steeped into the inequities in education. I mean, that was my life from day to day. I literally went from a school that was in the middle of $1 million golf community to a school in a very impoverished migrant community. And I just saw the difference in resources, despite, all of these young people being talented and gifted, and just really created a burden for me as it relates to equity in education. So I taught for a few more years, did some other things with education, but I decided that how could I really make an impact even outside of the classroom? And I decided to go to law school. Applied, got in, and at that point, I just said, okay, I will figure out how I can get into that space. And what is also key for me is that I had a choice between getting a PhD in a law and a law degree. And from a practical standpoint for me, I did not want to write a dissertation, right? So I said, I will go to law school. But I will tell everybody that's listening, make sure you know all of the requirements, because I've taken two bar exams in 2 different states now. And let me tell you, I think the dissertation would have been a little bit easier, one and done. But went to law school, really focused on education, found out I could still take education courses even within law school. So I was able to do that. And I just really got my charge, right? Like you were being armed with education on policy and law and understanding the historical underpinnings of the inequities in education, particularly as it relates to, impoverished communities or communities that are primarily Black and brown. And so I practiced law for a little while, but ultimately felt the call to really get back to working with young people and helping them to change the trajectory of their lives. And I started volunteering. I volunteered with United Way. I started a mentoring organization at a middle school near my firm. And then someone introduced me to Usher's New Look. And I resigned from my firm because when I tell you the call was so strong for me to figure out what was the next thing. Loved practicing law, but I knew that there was something else out there for me to do. And I was introduced to Usher's New Look, started volunteering there, and one thing sort of led to another.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. You have had quite the wealth of experience. So let's start with the lawyer aspect of your life. So why law? I mean, I understand because not the dissertation, but why was law something that you were interested in? How did you even know that that was something you wanted to do?
I started thinking about just, from a legality, from a policy end about education, how are resources dispersed based upon zip codes? How do we help to advocate for those students who are not getting access to the same resources or as a result, not having a quality education? And I had seen that up front, and I knew that, okay, as an educator, I'm equipped to help these young people learn reading, writing, and math, and all of the other things that I do. But I knew that I needed to further my education on the policy end of it. How our budgets allocated, just the historical part of where we are with education. How do you make changes in the system, which is what I was very interested in doing.
So as a lawyer, you think that you're going to work for a firm. How are you making impact systematically, like you're talking about, while still working within a law firm? Isn't that businesses and representing clients?
It is, and that's one thing that I'll say to the listeners, for those who are particularly interested in law, there is so much you can do with a law degree, right? So for me, my areas of practice were primarily family law, civil litigation, but I was also with a firm that represented several school districts. So we did a lot around representing the school districts from an education perspective, but I knew I wanted to be on the other side of it, working with parents and students. So making sure that you're choosing sort of that right area of practice. It was still a great experience for me. But systematically, when you think about, Brown versus Board of Education and all of the cases, the Little Rock Nine and those things that sort of came out of even the civil rights area, they were spearheaded by lawyers. And I love Charles Hamilton Houston has a quote about lawyers being social engineers. And I really took that to heart, right? We have the knowledge, you have the credibility, doors open for you. For some reason, people think lawyers can do anything. And so they listen to you. You can get the ear of folks that you may not otherwise. And I think that is a part of, along with the technical knowledge, but just that credibility and influence, you can use that to bring about change.
That's a great point. And it's true. People do think lawyers are capable.
Yeah.
If you're passing the bar exam, you are capable to some extent. Absolutely.
I agree.
When did you decide what part of law you were interested in? I mean, I think there are people that go to law school and know exactly what they're interested in, but do you need to know that before you get to law school?
You don't. It's nice to have an idea. Because for me, I always said education. I wanted to focus on education. But I'll tell you what, when I got into law school, I remember distinctly taking trust in estates law and thinking, oh, this is very interesting. I think I was always interested in practices that work with people, help them structure family, help them with issues that related to family. So that sort of took me on the family law track. Like I said, I was able to take some graduate level education courses around policy and historical underpinnings of education as it relates to the law. So I was able to do a deep dive into that. But I would say sort of start to take a little bit of everything. I'll tell you, my last semester, as I was taking sort of medical malpractice and some other courses, one of my professors offered African American history in the law. And this course essentially looked at constitutional law cases, but from a perspective of African Americans in America. And when I tell you that, I tell everyone that was really sort of my charge going out of law school. It's my last semester. And it just helped to remind me of my goals and what it is that I was going to do following law school. I'm going to help to fight inequity, and I was going to help to make sure that everybody had access to quality education, regardless of the color of your skin or your zip code or your resources.
Okay, so while you were in law school, or while you were practicing law, you also were teaching.
Yeah.
And so you had a full-time job, but you decided, I'm not busy enough, so I need to do more. What made you decide that you wanted to take on this other role, this extra role? Why teach? And then why teach while having a full-time job?
I think teaching is at my core, right? And helping, and an opportunity came about with Nova Southeastern University to become an adjunct in their graduate level courses. So I was teaching things that related to education, nonprofit management. I know that this is the topic for today, as well as some law classes. And so I said, why not? You know, it pulled on the knowledge and the experience that I had. When I think about it, it was not as taxing. You know, I did it for about 10 years, actually. And as you continue to sort of teach the same courses, it becomes easier to do that. And the opportunity came about. I will tell you that I have a mentor who works in the transportation industry, and she's a woman that has just become super successful. And one of the things that I asked her is how, you know, what does she attribute this success to? And she said, never passing on an opportunity. And so I keep that in mind. And sometimes you take those opportunities and they turn out to be fantastic. In that case, I did it for 10 years until a point where I was like, okay, you know, I've got kids now, my time, I don't have as much time. But then sometimes those opportunities turn into learning experiences, and they may not pan out the way you wanted it, but I can guarantee that you learn something from it.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you said is important. As you get to later points in life, you may find yourself with too many opportunities because of all the work you've done. So then you really have to figure out how to pick and choose.
That's right.
Okay, so you were a teacher, and that's amazing. You then decided to go to Usher's New Look. And so please talk to us a little bit about what New Look is, what you do, and how you really got connected in to this opportunity.
Okay, so I'll start with the last question, right? So literally, I resigned from my law firm twice in a year. The first time I resigned, I had a partner to reach out and said, look, you can come work for me any hours you want. I really just need research done. I'm like, okay, I'll do that, right? Monday through Wednesday, I remember at 9 to 2 was my schedule. That freed me up to be able to do more philanthropically and in the community. So I did that for a while, but when I tell you that little voice inside of you that says, there's something else out there for you, right? And I had to listen to that. And I resigned again, and this time I said, it's not you, it's me. There's something else I'm supposed to be doing. So that was about 4 or 5 months later. And literally my last day, I went down to tell a colleague goodbye, and she had a little bag on her desk. And I said, when did you go shopping? And she's like, no, I didn't go shopping. I went to a luncheon, and you need to get connected with this organization. And I bought this bag back for you. It has information in it and some other things. She said, it's Usher's new look. Have you heard of it? It was started by Usher Raymond. And I said, I think I may have heard of it, but not really. I'd be interested. And she said, well, I'm going to email you and connect you with the host of the table for the luncheon. So I reached out to her, and just through some divine intervention, someone else happened to email her about me. So it was meant to be, but the steps included me going to an event that following week. And as I was sitting there, I was just thinking, this is the organization where I need to be. Based on everything that I had learned, this is the organization that my students needed, that set me on this path of helping young people change the trajectory of their lives. And so, in a short, Usher's New Look is an organization that works with young people ages 14 through 24 to provide them career and education training, and also drawing on their particular passions, talents, and gifts to help them change the trajectory of their lives. We operate in Atlanta and New York, and really we've done work all over the world. Usher started this organization when he was 19 to truly give young people a new look on life. He wanted them to see careers that they may not have been exposed to. He wanted them to think about their lives and education as a path, perhaps to break generational poverty, or just a way for them to experience economic and social mobility. And that's what we do. We work with young people who are talented and gifted, but they may be experiencing some systemic barriers that may keep them from experiencing all that they should as a result of their gifts and talents.
Yeah. And one of the things that you talk about with the foundation is about helping young people find their spark. So can you explain what that means?
Yeah. So our curriculum is evidence-based, research-based, and that particular portion is based on Peter Benson's research on spark exploration. And what his research basically says is when you connect young people with their natural gifts and talents, their spark, that thing that sparks them, that ignites them, you can find that they will achieve much more easily. They will thrive. They will set goals. It will change their mindset. And so a lot of what we do is based on that. We help young people think about, what are you good at? What are you naturally talented in? What do you enjoy doing? All of our students take a spark assessment where they go through, I always say it reminds me of sort of, remember like Teen Magazine, how you would take those little quizzes. It will tell you if you have 3 B's and 2 C's, what it means. But it kind of shows them, this is where you are. This is what you're really good at based upon your responses. And these are particular careers that may draw on your natural gifts and talents. And that's where we start with them. And I think that changes the conversation for them. It makes education relevant for young people when they say, okay, I'm not just learning math just for math's sake or science or writing, but I'm learning it because I'm good at this, and this particular career is a possibility for me. And if I keep getting good and cultivating my gifts and talents, I can find myself in a particular position to change my life.
So how do you hone in on what your spark is if you're interested in lots of things and lots of things make you happy, and you kind of are interested in like 4 different things? How do you focus and figure out what that underlying drive is?
I will say, I will talk about really what we focus our young people on, because when we tell them you may be good at a lot of things, explore them all, right? Because then once you get to sort of my age, things start to take shape and you sort of develop maybe your personal mission statement around your purpose and what you were supposed to be doing. So I'm not talking about hobbies and things that you just enjoy doing, but I'm talking about those things that lead to careers and, when you think about leaving a legacy or a real impact. And for me, I've been interested in a lot of different things, but it's really all kind of come to a head around education. And I think that starts to become clear as they look at all of their different sparks and gifts and talents, experience different things within those realms, and then start a career and sort of see what draws your attention. What do you become really good at? Where are people starting to recognize your gifts and talents? And then it starts to become clear where you should focus and maybe hone in on those particular sparks.
So what's your spark?
My spark truly is helping young people succeed and change the trajectory of their lives in leveling the playing field. Before this, I just got off of a call. We're working on a project, and we were talking to some folks who were just giving us some input on this deck for this particular initiative around entrepreneurship and young people. And when they were talking about all of the things that we should continue to include, or maybe some things we should think about because they found adults don't have this knowledge, that excites me, Kashi, right? Like making sure that once they are met with an opportunity, they're prepared, they stand out, and they're confident. That is truly my spark.
And so how does that influence how you operate through life? Like, yes, it influences, you're doing the work. Not everybody works in what their passion is, right? So how does your spark or your purpose drive your behavior on an everyday level?
That's a great question. So I also think it's a little bit of compartmentalization too, right? As a mom, as a wife, as a friend, a sister, there's my career, and now there are those things that I'm naturally drawn to, right? I'll hop on a webinar on equity in education because I love it, because I want to learn more. But I'm also very interested in reading and traveling and spending time with my family. And when I'm going to do those things, even how I'm parenting, right? I'm thinking about parenting my students in a way that we work with UNL students. I want them to be exposed just as we expose the students in Usher's New Look. I want them to have all of these experiences as well. When I'm reading, because I love to read, yes, I'll read fiction and other things, but I'm also drawn to books about impact, So I think it really permeates, and, you kind of look back and there's a thread that goes through your life. And to me, it's defined as purpose. And it's not always clear, but it becomes clearer as we go through life and as sort of lots of things converge. I think even, people that you meet, they come into your life and it's all around sometimes certain purposes and things become clearer. And you're like, wow, I didn't know we had this in common. And it just happens that way. I think when you put it out there and when you're doing what you love to do and what you're purpose to do, things just kind of conspire to make sure that you're able to achieve in those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Do you think this concept of spark and finding your purpose, it is such an important concept and something you should start as early as possible? How do we infuse this concept into classroom learning? Or do you think that clearly you've thought about this. So how do we do that? Or will we get there?
I think as we think about education, and certainly over this last year, if education doesn't change, then, I don't know what to say, but hopefully it's clear to everyone that it needs an overhaul, just the system, right? Education has not really changed. You have some different models, but hasn't really changed since its inception, and it's very industrialized and sort of designed to kind of put students through a system to teach them all sort of the same things at certain markers along the way. And I think we do need to think about that differentiation, if you will, right? How do you make education relevant to the student who's interested in entertainment, but also the student who's interested in science? And it can be done. I think about my first teaching experience, Kashi. I taught gifted education. And this was the blessing in it all. I walked into my classroom and they were rebuilding this gifted program. And the person who was over the program dropped a box of videotapes, and that tells you how old I am. Dropped a box of videotapes and said, this is the curriculum. I'm not gonna show kids the videotapes and give them workbooks. So I was able to took a little more work, but I was able to create different experiences for them that drew on what it is that they were naturally interested in. And I think we can do that. I think it's going to take changing teacher education programs. I think it will take getting more educators involved in the systemic changes in education, but also parents and students, right? Hearing and appreciating that youth voice and how we change education is important. Also getting the private sector involved. what is it that they need our young people to know when they're graduating high school and graduating college? What are those skills that they need? I know creativity is valued in corporations. How do you build more of that in education so that these young people are becoming more producers and not just consumers?
Yeah, critical thinking is key, and we need to get back to that for sure.
Absolutely.
So, one more question. We have a lot of student questions coming in. One more question for me. So, you're in the nonprofit space. We're talking about purpose and creating an impact on an individual student, on a group of students, on the community. How do you measure impact?
So for us, it is about looking at the conditions that exist, right? And what do we do to meet those conditions, but also looking at those short, mid, and long-term outcomes. What do we want our students to become after they've gone through an Usher's New Look program? And we look at metrics such as high school graduation, college graduation, going on to career within a certain number of years after graduating. But also things like, do they have a resume, right? Have they had the opportunity to do internships? Do they have a budget? Do they know how to budget? Are they understanding financial literacy principles? And then a part of that is working with professional evaluators to help us to measure this impact, right? So there are pre-tests and post-tests and focus groups because we want to hear from those that we serve so that we can begin to make real-time change and how we're impacting them. And also looking at how the landscape's changing, how the needs change. I mean, so much is going to change after this year. Just last week, we had a few folks that met at our office to ideate on how are we going to meet the needs of filling these pipelines, career pipelines, and coming up with some initiatives around that. So it's constant, frequent measurement around those objectives that we have identified through a logic model that we want our young people to achieve.
And when you think about measuring it personally, so when we talked about how purpose translates into everyday life, how do you think about that? I mean, how do you think of like your success as it relates to living that purposeful life every day?
For me, it can come in a variety of ways. A young person reaching out and asking for a referral letter to graduate school, someone who had not even thought about graduate school before. Maybe they're their first in the family to even graduate high school or college. That's the success. Having young people, I'll tell you, a couple weeks ago, and I was just so overtaken by it. One of our young people who went through our program, who now works for Disney, because of the impact of the program on him, he reached out to me and said, hey, we're looking at some initiatives with organizations that are supporting Black and Brown youth. I want to make the introduction with Usher's New Look in Disney. He set up a meeting with one of the directors. He led the call, and he's following up to make sure that we're able to establish a partnership with them and get other young people in spaces where he is. That's success, right? That's what it's about. It's the social mobility that happens as a result of the access, opportunity, and exposure that Usher's New Look is able to provide our young people so that not only their lives have changed, but generations to come are changed. They're operating differently, they're thinking differently, speaking differently as a result of what they've experienced.
Yeah, that must be very rewarding to have something like that happen. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
Okay, student question time. So we have a list.
Oh, wow.
So I'll take the first one. Porter would like to know, what's the biggest misconception about after you graduate? Does life set you up? Does life set you up for failure by society's expectations?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
That is a loaded question. Yeah.
I think the biggest misconception is that all you have to do is work hard and you're going to be successful. There's so much more that goes into being successful. And there's a guy named Harvey Coleman who wrote a book about organizational gain and how you achieve at it. right? And he came up with this theory, the pie theory, that it's performance, image, and exposure that really contributes to your success. I would suggest getting that book and reading it, because it is truly life-changing in the sense that you realize they tell you work hard, get good grades, do well on your tests, boom, you're going to be successful. That's not all it takes. You have to get in there. You have to try something, get out of your comfort zone, meet people that you may not have readily, maybe in your friend group, not be the first one to clock out at 5 o'clock every day, but maybe it's going to, play golf, or, going to the birthday party, or, maybe the summer outing at the corporation. Letting people know what it is that you're doing, getting that visibility is also key to success. So I said that is the biggest, misconception, that you just work hard and you're going to get it. It takes a little bit more than that. And I think in addition to performance, it's making sure your image is there in terms of how you present yourself, but also exposure, getting to know other aspects of the business as well as people.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice, or several pieces of advice. And also putting yourself out there and like going to these events are not easy. And for a lot of people, it's not easy. So just know that everybody's outside their comfort zone, and it's uncomfortable. It's a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. And you practice and you get better at it. So it doesn't just, everybody's not just good at it, right? No. Everybody in that room, most people are just as nervous as you are.
Right.
So,
right. And I will say, some people identify as introverts versus extroverts. It's for everybody, right? You just do what, sometimes it's putting yourself out there, like you said, just to be a little bit uncomfortable, but the more you do it, the easier it'll get.
Exactly. Skip wants to know, how do I find an internship for this summer? Is it too late?
No, I don't think it's too late. I've seen even that there are some organizations and companies that are still looking out for internships. I will say, generally you want to start at least 8 months before you're looking for an internship, at least 8 months before, but maybe identify some companies that you're interested in interning with, and then go on to their career site and see if there may be some positions that are still available, especially this year when things are still seem to be sort of virtual. The other thing that I would say, Kashi, I noticed you said this segment is presented by Steppingblocks. We work with Steppingblocks as well. In fact, we just did a Clubhouse talk with them yesterday. So you see what I mean when things happen and they all kind of come together.
Steppingblocks is great, yeah.
Yeah, but I will say go on LinkedIn and maybe identify some people that are in industries or companies that you're interested in, make connections with them, and let them know that you're interested in an internship. You never know. There may be an opportunity for you that they are even looking to fill, and you would not have found out otherwise except for reaching out to them.
Yeah, and this goes back to putting yourself out there and ask. You just keep asking everybody you meet, I'm looking for something like this. Yeah. You might find something. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, this is about talking about sparks. Julia wants to know, can your spark change over time? And does that mean it's time to change jobs, or is it better to find another way to fulfill it?
Ooh, okay. I think your sparks can absolutely change over time. I think the more you experience and the more you expose yourself to, you can find other things that you're good at and that you enjoy. And I don't know if necessarily that means it's time to change jobs, because sometimes depending on your career or the company that you're with, you may be able to create a role, or you may be able to work on a project or switch departments that allows you to explore other areas of your gifts and talents. So I would say, everyone should have a mentor within their company or outside. Talking to your mentor as you think about, maybe I want to explore another side of things that I'm really good at. What's the best way to navigate that for your particular company, I would say. And this kind of relates to, I think it was Skip's question too, about when we were saying, being comfortable. And I talked about reaching out on LinkedIn, and Kashi, you talked about putting yourself out there. Don't be discouraged by no's, right? So this goes for this question as well as the other. don't be discouraged by no's. If someone says, no, it can't happen, then it maybe you're not talking to the right person, and keep going, right? And then if you're hitting a wall, then maybe you start to think about other companies out there that may be a better fit or something you want to try. But don't be discouraged by a no.
Yeah, agreed. And if you get a no, ask why and see if that feedback matches up against all the other no's you've got. Maybe you'll see a trend and maybe that's something to tweak. It's a learning experience, right? Or it's an opportunity. So
I agree, 100%.
So Jake wants to know, what is your favorite book for getting ahead? I know you mentioned one of them. Do you have another one?
For getting ahead, I just read The Memo by Minda Hart, which is very similar to The Organizational Game. The other one would be How to Influence People and Win Friends. That's another one, as we were talking about networking and sort of being in uncomfortable spaces. I think that is a key book, and it's something you can kind of thumb through. You don't have to read it cover to cover. But Carnegie's books are typically really good as far as helping you to just navigate business and people and networking and relationships.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie's books really do stand the test of time. They're universally true concepts. Yeah. Read all of them.
Yes, I 100% agree on that.
Yeah. All right. I knew we would get this question. Francis wants to know, what is it like working with Usher?
I knew that was coming.
And also, were you ever intimidated?
So no, not intimidated. Usher is an amazing individual that is truly, he even calls himself a humanist. He is about making sure that the world is a better place and using his platform to just really provide support where it's needed. In our case of Usher's New Look, helping young people to achieve their purpose. And so it is fantastic working for someone who had a vision at 19 and is still making sure that that vision is continuing today and forever, and even thinking about what the future of Usher's New Look could be. So I will say that it has been absolutely fantastic working for this organization for 10 years and getting to know him on that level, not just as in respecting him as an entertainer, but getting to know him from community and a philanthropic way.
And he's involved, right? I mean, it's not just like he decided to do something nice, and he like actually is involved in how you are laying out what's going on.
Absolutely. He is an active member of our board. He knows our students. He is affectionately known as Big Brother Almighty because all of our students in Usher's New Look have code names. He is absolutely engaged in, and like I said, just to know that this is something real for him and really wanting to make that impact, I think it makes all the difference.
That goes back to purpose, and he started this with purpose in mind. And so then, you're That's driven right. to be involved and be engaged. All right. Emily would like to know, which has been more valuable in your career, your education or your experience?
Ooh. I would say experience edges out education just a little bit. But education is so important because I think it creates sort of that burning to be a lifelong learner. And you have to have that. And I think that is what sparks you to seek out additional experiences. So you see, they kind of feed each other. But I would say experience just by a little bit, because experience truly, I know it's cliche, but it truly is like the greatest teacher. You learn so many lessons just by what you do, what you experience, people that you meet, and relationships that you build. Great question.
Yeah. Okay, this is a long one, so let's see. Shruti wants to know, how do we find balance between focusing on professional growth and personal growth? How do you suggest we navigate this job market? I graduated from college this year, and the next steps of my journey are extremely unclear, so I would love advice.
Okay, repeat the first part again for me.
How do we find balance between focusing on professional growth and personal growth?
Okay. Um, that balance is a misnomer, right? I tend to not use it. I think you look at what is prioritized for that particular moment. And, there may be times in your life where you're going to have to grind and go hard to get ahead from a career and a professional standpoint. And then there are times when you're going to be focused more on personal, right? For me, it was having kids and balancing that and making sure that I'm there for them. So I pulled back a little bit more professionally. But now that they're older, I'm able to do some things because I have some professional goals that I want to achieve. So I think it's prioritization more so than they're both going to coexist equally at the same time.
I like to call it harmony.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
As long as you're happy and healthy and everybody else in your orbit feels good, then do what you need to do.
You're doing what's important at that time. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to start using that, Kashi.
Okay, great. Yeah. So her other question was, how do you suggest we navigate this job market? Her journey is looking a little unclear to her right now.
It's going to be similar to what I said before. It's really putting yourself out there and reaching out to people, especially when things just are not as in person as they were. You don't have as many networking opportunities as you may have had a year ago or a year and a half ago or 2 years ago now. LinkedIn truly is an amazing resource and tool that I think you should leverage. I think social media can be leveraged for so much more than just sort of personal and staying in touch relationship. I've personally gotten into Twitter, Kashi. I think that you can I've met some amazing people on Twitter, had some great conversations, and then took those conversations off of Twitter into sort of this virtual space now and even in person. Because you can really kind of craft who it is that you are looking to target and to introduce yourself to. So I would say putting yourself out there. Don't be afraid to let people know that you're looking. I've even seen people put their resume, a link to their resume, not your personal, phone number and address, but a link to their resume on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm a recent graduate. This is my experience. This is what I'm looking to do. Is anyone hiring? The other thing I would say is if you have mentors or sponsors, someone who can bring you up in particular rooms and said, hey, I know a fantastic person that I would love for you to think about for a particular position, don't be afraid about letting those people know that you're looking as well, I think is the key. So it's just the more people that know of what it is that you want to do, they can help you. And I think don't expect for them to just automatically say, oh, I know she's not working. Let me see how I can help her. You have to be forthcoming and affirmatively ask.
Absolutely. You have to ask. If you don't ask, you can't get a yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Also, I've gotten into Clubhouse recently, and that's also a good resource. I mean, people are really open to just discussion and helping each other out on that platform. So it's another good one to check out.
Absolutely. And the follow-up, that's where the real success comes in the follow-up. If someone says, hey, email me and let's set a date, don't let too many days go by, right? You've got to follow up immediately because that opportunity could be there for the moment and then gone. So I would say make sure your follow-up game is very, very strong in that sense.
Yeah, that's a good life skill because so much about life is follow-up. You might ask once and nothing happens, and you have to ask like sometimes 3 or 4 times. And it's not because you're not bothering the person if you're polite. But like follow up and like make it happen, be persistent. People value that.
Oh, 100%. And it could be that, at the moment they just had so many things on their plate and you're just kind of helping bring it back to the forefront. I think they appreciate that.
Absolutely. You can be better at follow-up than they are, and it's okay.
That's right.
All right. Last question. I think this is a good one to end on. Paul says, I'm just a student. I don't run a company. I don't sit on any boards. What can I do to really help the community?
So Paul, first thing I would say is think about areas that you are passionate about what is it that sort of resonates with you as a particular societal issue? And there's an activity that we do with Usher's New Look called Exploding the Issue, where young people think about, okay, what do you think is the biggest issue in your particular community, or come up with a few of them. I would say, think about what sparks you, what ignites you, what is it that, sort of resonates with you. And then maybe looking up organizations in your area that address those issues and saying, hey, how can I volunteer? That's a super easy way to do it. If you can't think of anything that particularly sparks you, just start to volunteer in a couple different areas. Easiest thing to do is go read to a child at a school, work at a food bank, go to the United Way. I know they have a service day coming up. I think that's nationally. Reaching out to your local United Way and saying, hey, how can I support and volunteer? Those are really easy ways to start until you identify that particular area that you are most passionate about. And I drive that because, remember, SPARK kind of goes through everything. And if you can volunteer in an area you're passionate about, I think the longevity will be there, but also you'll be really happy with the impact that you've been able to make.
That is great advice. And unfortunately, we're out of time today. So we're going to leave it there. But continuing that piece of advice, students, please go to our website, sign up for the mailing list. We send you opportunities. We send you opportunities for internships and like ways to get involved. So make sure you're signed up. You can find us everywhere on the web, supernovacommence.com, @supernovacommence. And next week, or our next show, I should say, is with Angela Ammons. She is CEO of Clinch Memorial Hospital, and she is a dynamo. So it will be a fun show. Our whole schedule is up on the website, so make sure you check it out, all of our past shows as well. Okay, well, do you have any other closing thoughts for our students before we part?
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for this platform, Kashi. This was fun and it went by really quickly. And for the students, I will say just, I always say create your own definition of success. It's not what other people define it to be. And if you follow your passion and your purpose, you will end up exactly where you need to be. For those who are interested in finding out more about Usher's New Look, you can go to our website, ushersnewlook.org, or you can follow us on social @Usher's New Look. And I just want to say best wishes to each of you and all of your personal endeavors. And I hope that at some point we're able to cross paths. So thank you again, Kashi. I really appreciate this conversation, and it was fun.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Thanks for joining us. Students, thanks for joining us. Thanks for tuning in. Congrats to all of you. You're all doing great. And reach out if you need anything. Share your experiences. Remember, it's a blessing to be a blessing. Be kind to people as you go through your day today and your week. And we will see y'all soon. Bye.